5. I invite you to turn with me there, Exodus chapter 5. We're continuing our study on the life of Moses. Study we've called An Ordinary Man, but with an Extraordinary God. Now, think back a couple years ago, DirecTV, okay? They ran a series of commercials known as the Get Rid of Cable commercials. Do you remember those commercials? They were pretty funny, a lot of them were. But the whole premise of these commercials that they ran was that if you have cable, as opposed to DirecTV, you will inevitably have problems and interruptions in your cable service. And when you do, you will become very frustrated. And when you become very frustrated, your reactions and the choices that you make because of your frustration will put you on a path of illogical and bizarre consequences. And you will eventually end up in a miserable state that you never would have dreamed of and certainly would not have desired. Let me see if I can refresh your memory here.
When your cable goes out, you get stressed. When you get stressed, you need to get away. When you need to get away, you go for something exotic. When you go for something exotic, you get bitten by something exotic. When you get bitten by something exotic, things swell up. When things swell up, you can't go home. And when you can't go home, you become a local fisherman they call Big Fatty Face. Don't become a local fisherman they call Big Fatty Face. Get rid of cable and upgrade to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV.
You see how quickly things go south? Thus, the obvious solution is to get rid of cable so that horrible thing won't happen to you. We're not going to ask you to raise your hand if you have cable this morning. Now, many of these commercials are hilarious, but the premise on which they operate is totally illogical. If you do this, then this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and before you know it, you're totally miserable and hopeless. And this illogical fallacy, doesn't allow for the possibility that somewhere along the way, things may well turn around, at the very least, or may even get better. Now, there are a number of ways that we could apply this to the life of the believer, but this morning I want to focus on the fact that our efforts to obey God sometimes actually do set off a mini chain reaction of negative events in our life for a while. But that those negative events that happen do not have to and should not lead to total misery and hopelessness, as the commercial would suggest. In fact, that many chain of negative reactions should in fact drive us back to God and to His truth. And there we will get a fresh glimpse of God's big picture and His power and His sovereign plan at work in our lives and in the world as a whole. And this is the lesson that God is teaching Moses in our text today. And I've entitled this, When Obedience Hits a Roadblock. So let's look at Matthew. Matthew. Wonder where that came from. Only 2.5 years of preaching through Matthew. Exodus chapter 5. Verse 1. Afterward, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh. Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness. But Pharaoh said, who is the Lord, that I should obey His voice and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and moreover, I will not let Israel go. Then they said, the God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please let us go a 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God, lest He fall on us with the pestilence or sword. But the king of Egypt said, Moses and Aaron, why do you take the people away from their work? Get back to your burdens. Pharaoh said, behold, the people of the land are now many, and you make them rest from their burdens. We'll pause there. We don't often think of it in these terms, but friends, hear me this morning. Roadblocks to obedience are invaluable when they drive us back to God and His unchanging truth. Say that again. Roadblocks to obedience are invaluable when they drive us back to God and His unchanging truth. So I hadn't really thought of them in those terms. Well, how is that the case? That's what we're going to see this morning. I want you to notice, first of all, the efforts to obey, and that's obey God, often meet roadblocks. And that's what we see with Moses and Aaron here. They're attempting to obey God, to do what God says, and bam, right away they hit this roadblock. Now, if you've been a child of God for any length of time, this is nothing new to you. You've experienced roadblocks along the way when you've tried to obey Him. And when you hit these roadblocks, they're confusing, they may be hurtful, and they tempt us to not want to continue obeying God. What's the roadblock that Moses hits here? Well, think about it. He's just come off an incredible spiritual high. On his way back from the land of Midian to meet up with his people and to deliver this news that God has called him to be the deliverer they've been looking for. And he's given them these incredible signs. He's just met up with who? We saw this last week. Aaron, his brother, who he hasn't seen in 40 years. And they have celebrated together this powerful message from God, how God is going to use them to set the people of Israel free. And they've come back to Egypt there. They've gotten together with the elders of the people of Israel. And the elders of the people of Israel are all fired up. Man, Moses has this message from God. He's going to set us free. He's finally heard our cries for deliverance. And he's given him several powerful signs that are going to indicate that this is God. And they better listen. Pharaoh better listen. In fact, Moses and Aaron may well be thinking at this point, this is going to go pretty fast. Pharaoh's going to be shaking in his boots when he hears us, and when he sees what God, the power that God has, we're going to make short work of this. We're going to be out of here in no time. You say, but John, didn't God tell Moses, Pharaoh's not going to listen to you? He's not going to let you go right away? Well, yeah, of course God had. But we understand this. We understand the excitement that Moses and Aaron have at this point. They've gotten this personal message from God, and now everybody's all fired up that God's going to do this incredible deliverance. And we do the same thing. We want to remember the promises of strength and victory, and we overlook the roadblocks we could encounter along the way. We want to focus on the positive, the end result, and we forget about the grueling process that it takes to get to the end result. And so Moses and Aaron show up to Pharaoh here in the beginning of Exodus 5 and demands, hey, God says, let my people go. What is Pharaoh's response? Pharaoh responds with arrogance. I don't know this Lord. I don't know this God of yours, and I really don't care. And I'm certainly not going to do anything he tells me to do. I'm certainly not going to let my free labor force go. Because after all, remember, Pharaoh is considered a god by the Egyptians. All Egypt worships him. So in his eyes, at the very least, he's at least equal with this God they're talking about. He doesn't have to bow to some god he doesn't know. So what's Moses and Aaron's response? And Pharaoh says, no way, buddy. Now they offer a modified proposal. Okay, well, if you're not just going to let them go, then verse 3, please let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness. So now here's kind of a modified request. But they weren't just making this up, because actually back in chapter 3, in verse 18, this is what God told them to ask for, to tell Pharaoh to do. Let them go for 3 days to worship in the wilderness. This is a more humble request. And they said, look, our God, he may fall on us with pestilence or a sword. And that's the least of Pharaoh's concern. He does not care about the people of God and their potential harm that could come to them. All he cared about was their production for brick making. And all he knew was that Moses and Aaron were getting the people riled up, and they were interfering with the people's production. They were a distraction to the people, and worse, they were getting up this false hope that they might somehow be getting out of Egypt. So I want to ask you some questions. What are some of the roadblocks that you've hit when trying to obey God? Is it a roadblock of your heart is willing, you want to do the right thing, but man, right now my flesh is just really weak. Jesus talked about that in the garden with the guys the night he was betrayed by Judas. Fallen asleep when he had told them to pray. Stay alert and pray. He said, I know your heart's with me. It's willing, it desires to pray, but your flesh is really weak right now. That's why you need to be grounded in prayer. Maybe it's the roadblock of a snide remark or ridicule when you announce your righteous intentions, your intentions to do right, and somebody makes fun of you. Maybe it's someone trying to persuade you not to obey God. Maybe it's just somebody who just knows what sets you off and they just want to push your buttons. Maybe it's painful memories from your past. Maybe it's just your selfishness and your pride welling up inside you that's getting in the way of obeying God. Or it could be maybe you're in a season where you have developed a cold and calloused heart and you need God's Spirit to come and bring warmth and fire, the heat of His Word, to warm you up and to plow up that fallow ground of your heart. No doubt there are times when you haven't obeyed God because you hit a roadblock or a series of roadblocks. Efforts to obey God do often meet with roadblocks, but notice that those roadblocks often makes matters worse before they get better. Look at verse 6. The same day Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people and their foremen, you shall no longer give the people straw to make bricks as in the past. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. But the number of bricks that they made in the past you shall impose on them. You shall by no means reduce it, for they're idle. Therefore they cried, let us go and offer sacrifices to our God. Let heavier work be laid on the men, that they may labor at it and pay no regard to lying words. So the taskmasters and the foremen of the people went and said to the people, thus says Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. Go and get your own straw yourselves wherever you can find it. But your work will not be reduced in the least. So the people were scattered throughout all the land of Egypt to gather stubble for straw. The taskmasters were urgent, saying, complete your work, your daily task each day, as when there was straw. And the foremen of the people of Israel, whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten and asked, why have you not done all your task of making bricks today and yesterday as in the past? Pharaoh was greatly annoyed at Moses and Aaron for stirring up the people and keeping them from their work. Ha! They've got way too much time on their hands. That's what it is. They're sitting around moaning and groaning, griping and complaining, belly aching. Let's keep them busy. In fact, so busy they won't have time to sit around and belly ache, and they won't have time to go listen to Moses and Aaron. I got an idea, guys. Let's stop providing them with straw. You're making it too easy on them. Let them go gather their own straw and still make the same number of bricks. That'll keep them busy. And for Israel, this made things incredibly difficult. They were already struggling under oppression, and now that's totally intensified, as now they have to search all over the land of Egypt for anything that would look like straw that could help them in their brick making. What before was difficult has virtually become impossible now, and they just aren't able to do it. They can't keep up with the demand. They're not meeting quota, and so what happens? Their foremen that are over them, their Israelite foremen that are over them, get beaten because they're not performing. The people aren't performing. Things have gone from bad to worse when they all thought things were going to get better because God has showed up. So what happened to Moses' talk of God's deliverance? The people are saying, oh, I thought we were supposed to be getting out of here, and things have only gotten worse. I know you've experienced that. You decide, I'm going to do right. I'm going to obey God. And it seems like things get better before they're worse. Things get worse before they're better. I wish they got better before they're worse. Things often get worse before. You know this. If you struggle with any addiction of any kind, and you try to get victory and freedom and obedience to God over that addiction, you often go through withdrawals. And it gets really hard before you're getting that freedom that you had hoped for and seeking to get. When our attempts to obey God impact those around us and they respond, their reactions can make your life pretty miserable. And it's hard. Joseph was committed to obeying God in Egypt and avoiding the immoral promptings by Potiphar's wife. And it didn't get better because he avoided her or because he didn't submit to her. It got worse. He got thrown into prison for it. Things definitely got worse. Friends, remember, know that when you plant your flag in the ground and you say, I am going to obey Christ, I am going to be committed to His truth. By His grace, I'm going to stop this sinful habit. I'm going to stop doing this wrong thing. By His grace, I'm going to start obeying Him in this matter. I'm going to start living out this godly practice that should have been in my life all along. There will be challenges. There will be roadblocks that will make it difficult, and things will sometimes get worse before they get better. But if you will press on and not quit, not fail, not get discouraged just because you've hit a roadblock, God, by His Spirit, through His truth, will encourage you, will strengthen you, and He will accomplish His good in you. Don't give up just because things are getting worse because you've hit a roadblock. They often get worse before they get better, but notice when they get worse, and this kind of flows along with that commercial we looked at earlier. When they get worse, you're often misunderstood. Look at verse 15. Then the foreman of the people of Israel came and cried to Pharaoh, why do you treat your servants like this? No straw is given to your servants, yet they say, make us bricks. And behold, your servants are beaten, but the fault is in your own people. But he said, you're idle. You're idle. That's why you say, let us go and sacrifice to the Lord. Go now and work. No straw will be given to you, but you must deliver the same number of bricks. The foreman of the people of Israel saw that they were in trouble and said, when they said, you shall by no means reduce the number of bricks, your daily task each day. They met Moses and Aaron, who were waiting for them as they came out from Pharaoh, and they said to them, the Lord look on you and judge, because you have made us stink in the sight of Pharaoh and his servants, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us. Yeah, when things get worse, we often get misunderstood, don't we? The foremen of Israel are wondering, wait a second, how did things go south here all of a sudden? Why do we stop getting straw? What's happened here? Because, see, they didn't understand about the conversation with Pharaoh and Moses. And so they go to Pharaoh to plead their case. Hey, what's changed? Why are you so hard on us now? Why are you not giving us straw? But when they heard his response in verse 17, you're idle. That's why you say, let us go and sacrifice. Aha! Then the light comes on. Oh, this has to do with Moses telling him to let us go. This is Moses and Aaron's fault. And so they're coming out of Pharaoh's presence and they see Moses and Aaron, and now they're really upset with Moses and Aaron. The Lord look on you and judge. You've made us stink in the sight of Pharaoh and his servants and have put a sword in their hand to kill us. They just unload on Moses and Aaron. This is your fault. This is your doing. It was bad enough before you guys came around out of the desert. But now Pharaoh and all of Egypt hates our guts, and people are going to die from this, because of your choices. And their fear for their own lives and their frustration and anger at Moses and Aaron just boils over. And for Moses, his bad day just got worse. His disappointment at Pharaoh's response, he was disappointed at Pharaoh's response. No, they can't go. His disappointment there, and now what's happened with the people turning on him, his disappointment has turned to disillusionment. Have you felt like that? What did I say? What did I do wrong? I was doing what God wanted me to do. I was seeking to obey Him. I was following His truth. Why are people misunderstanding? Can they not see that I'm obeying Him? Why have they assigned motives to my words and to my actions that are not true at all? I'm sure you can relate to this. I certainly can. Friends, remember, there wasn't a person more misunderstood than our Savior. on his Father's mission. Maybe you've been misunderstood by a friend, a coworker, a boss, a spouse, a child, a sibling, a fellow church member. And boy, it hurts when we're misunderstood, doesn't it? It's usually unnecessary pain and rejection because it's typically not based on the facts when we're misunderstood. And while God has made us to live in a community to encourage and support each other, He also allows circumstances in which it seems that we have no one but God who believes us and who knows. And friends, I'm here to tell you, when you feel you have no one but God, He is enough. He is enough. When things get worse, we're often misunderstood. But see, here's where we diverge from the commercial. When we're misunderstood, we must go back to God's truth. Look at verse 22. Then Moses turned to the Lord and said, "O Lord, why have you done this evil to this people? Why did you ever send me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, and you have not delivered your people at all." But the Lord said to Moses, "Now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh, for with a strong hand he will send them out, and with a strong hand he will drive them out of this land." God spoke to Moses and said to him, "I am the Lord. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as God Almighty, but by my name, the Lord, I did not make myself known to them. I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land in which they lived as sojourners. Moreover, I have heard the groanings of the people of Israel, whom the Egyptians hold as slaves, and I have remembered my covenant. Say therefore to the people of Israel, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. I will deliver you from slavery to them. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great acts of judgment. I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God. And you shall know that I am the Lord your God, who has brought you out from under the burdens of Egypt. I will bring you into the land that I swore to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to you for a possession. I am the Lord." Moses thus spoke to the people, but they did not listen to Moses because of their broken spirit and harsh slavery. So the Lord said to Moses, "Go in, tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the people of Israel go out of his land." But Moses said to the Lord, "Behold, the people of Israel have not listened to me. How then shall Pharaoh listen to me? For I am of uncircumcised lips." But the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron and gave them a charge about the people of Israel and about Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring them out of the land of Egypt. It's pretty obvious Moses is feeling pretty low. As we might say around here, feeling lower than a snake's belly in a wagon, right? But what did Moses do? He didn't give up. He did the one thing he knew to do, and that was to go back to the one who sent him on the mission in the first place. Friend, there's not a better place to go when you feel like Moses felt. And this is going to be the first of numerous over the next 40 years of Moses running back to God because he's misunderstood, ridiculed, scorned. That's going to happen many, many times as the people of Israel impugn his motives, as they malign his character, and as they complain about his leadership. This is just the first. It's going to happen over and over again. And Moses, time and time again, he goes back to God and he pours out his soul to God. "Lord, I did what you said. It's only gotten worse. It's not gotten better. Why did you send me out here if it's just going to get worse? I told you back at the bush, God, this isn't a good idea. I'm not the guy for the job." And just as God did with Moses at the bush, he does again so here. He graciously, lovingly, patiently responds to Moses. He doesn't blast him for this momentary lapse of faith. He doesn't push him away. Moses, I got a planet to run. In fact, I got a whole universe to run, so just leave me alone right now. No. God meets Moses where he is, and he says in essence to Moses, Moses, Pharaoh's gotten too big for his britches. Moses, Pharaoh thinks he's equivalent with me, and thus he doesn't have to obey me. But Moses, I'm going to show my incredible power. I'm going to show him my might, and Moses, he will let them go. Because Moses, I am the Lord. And Moses, you're going to have a front row seat to all this action. It's going to be awesome. Friends, the same God who said that to Moses says the same thing to you and I today. I am the Lord, your God, and I will work on your behalf. Trust me. Obey me, submit to me, and watch me do my work in your life. He's the same God today as he was back then. He reminds Moses who he is and that he's in charge. Look at this. Look at verse 2. 5 times he says this. I am the Lord. Verse 2. I am the Lord. Look down at verse 6. I am the Lord. Verse 7. I am the Lord your God. Verse 8. I am the Lord. And then down again in verse 29, which we just look at it. Verse 29. He says the same thing. I am the Lord. 5 times in this chapter, he reminds Moses, I am the Lord. Pharaoh thinks he's God. He's not. He is no match. He's no comparison to me. He cannot stand up to me, Moses, because I am the Lord. Moses, everything's going to be just fine because I am the Lord, and there is no one like me. So, friends, have your circumstances caused you to take your focus off the Lord and off of who he is and that he is in control? Have you forgotten who's ultimately in control of your life and your circumstances? Have you forgotten that he is the Lord and there is nothing too difficult for him? Yeah, you won't be able to handle the roadblocks in your life on your own, and you won't be able to handle them until you remember that he is the Lord and he is in charge and your eyes are fixed on him. Chuck Swindoll wrote this. It's very fitting. I want you to read it. Fix your eyes on the Lord. Do it once. Do it daily. Do it 10,000 times 10,000 times. Do it constantly. When your schedule presses, when your prospects thin, when your hope burns low, when people disappoint you, when events turn against you, when dreams die, when the walls close in, when the prognosis seems grim, when your heart breaks, look at the Lord and keep looking at him. Fix your eyes on the Lord. Friends, no situation is so tangled, no situation is so out of control that God cannot work because he is the Lord. But not only does he graciously remind Moses 5 times, I am the Lord. Notice what else he reminded Moses of, that he is the one who is going to accomplish it. 8 times. 8 times in these first 8 verses, God says, I will do this. Look at verse 1. Now you will see what I will do. Look at verse 6. I will bring them out from under the burdens of Israel. I will deliver them from the slavery. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm. I will take you to be my people. I will be your God. I will bring you into the land that I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I will give it to you. Moses, you're not doing this. I'm doing it. I am the Lord, and I will accomplish this in your life. Moses, because of who I am, I will do what is best for you and for my people. So this encouraged Moses, at least enough to go back to the people of Israel to try to comfort them, but they wouldn't buy it because of their broken spirits, verse 9 says, their harsh slavery. But God says anyway, Moses, go back to Pharaoh and tell him to let my people go. And Moses says, God, the people aren't buying it. Pharaoh's not going to buy it. But God reassures Moses, yes, Moses, it will happen. Friends, it's okay to tell God what you're feeling. He's a big boy. He knows. You're just verbalizing what he already knows. You're not telling him anything he doesn't already know. You're not telling him your feelings just because you think he needs to be informed. He already knows because he reads your heart better than you read your heart. The key in telling him your frustrations, your feelings, is to remain humble and submissive while you pour out your fears and your concerns. See, that's where we usually blow it. We tell him, but we tell him in an angry, hurt way instead of in a humble and submissive way while we pour out our fears and concerns. What's not okay is defiance and arrogance and saying, God, what right do you have to do this to me? If you love me, why are you allowing this in my life? That is not okay. But it is okay to pour out your hurt and your fears and concerns to him. Our dependence must be in God alone, not in our ability to fix the problem, to improve the situation. God, F.B. Meyer said, God must bring us down before he can raise us up. Emptying must precede filling. We must get to an end of ourselves before he can fill us. Have you gotten to the end of yourself? While having problems with cable won't automatically result in being called big fatty face, it is true that roadblocks are intended by God to drive us to him. So let's remember this glorious truth. Roadblocks to obedience are invaluable when they drive us back to God's unchanging truth. You see, we don't usually use those two words in the same sentence, roadblocks and invaluable, but friend, they are. They're put there to drive us back to him, to remind us we can't do it on our own. We need his help, and thus it is invaluable. Moses and Aaron were rejected by Pharaoh, and what does Moses do? He goes back to God and to God's truth. What did the Israelites do? They didn't go back to God and God's truth. They got frustrated. They got hurt. They got angry. They tried to fix the problem themselves by chewing out Moses and Aaron instead of going back to God and his truth. And they got further frustrated, discouraged, depressed. F.B. Meyer said again, we must never suppose that the difficulties which confront us indicate that we are not on God's path and doing his work. Sometimes that's when we hit the biggest challenges, is when we're doing exactly what God has called us to do. A couple of questions and we're done. What roadblocks to obedience have I been recently experiencing? Take some time this week to think. Some are already coming to your mind, no doubt. Things that have kept me from obeying God or challenged my commitment to obeying him. How have I been responded when I've been misunderstood? People have totally taken my comments or my actions and twisted them to be understood in a way totally different than what my heart was. Do I get defensive? Do I get angry? Do I feel like I have to get on a rampage and set the record straight so that everybody knows? Or have I run back to God and his truth and asked for divine help and wisdom in how I should respond? Last, how have I been looking at my immediate circumstances? I've been consumed with the immediate circumstance, and I haven't been able to look past that to God's bigger picture and what he's trying to accomplish in my life through this. I've been so zeroed in on this one circumstance because I can't make sense of it. And I've totally lost sight of the bigger picture of what God's trying to accomplish in this. I'm going to end with a prayer that Chuck Swindoll wrote in his book on Moses. This is how we need to pray, even if it feels that we never want to pray again. Let's bow in prayer. Lord, I don't feel like praying right now, but hear my prayer anyway, Lord. I will believe you. Even though the tide is rising and I'm already on my tiptoes. I will believe you even though it seems like it's taking forever for you to keep your promise. I will believe you even though I've come to the ragged end of my strength, the dregs of my hope, the broken shards of my plans. I will not look for a shortcut. I will not take the carnal option. I will not retreat from the battle. I will believe you. Lord, may that be the prayer of each one of us here this morning as we've hit roadblocks, as we've faced discouragement, as we've been misunderstood, maligned. May we believe you. May we run to you in your unchanging nature and character and your unchanging truth. Because your truth will set us free. Your truth will empower us. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Let's stand together and sing in closing a song that reflects on this grace that we have been given and what our response is. What grace is mine? Thank you. If you need encouragement along these lines, I'm always available. You can let me know. We can set up a time to meet. Love you to take you to God and His truth. He is big, and He is more than enough for your need. Men, if you can help tonight at 6:30, tear out that ceiling. Please see Paul and let him know. Please take note of all the other things in the bulletin as well. God bless you.